Hi, I'm Sonia Booker.
And I'm Ivana. Welcome to PhilX Changemakers Master Series, where we have conversations about strategic philanthropy. And tonight we are talking about money and why all money is not good money.
Now, that's a whole thought to think about all money is not good money because it's so contrary to like, just show me the money, give me the money, I need the money. And now you're telling us, that all money isn't good money. What is that? Like, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think it's really important when we talk about having conversations specifically curated for entrepreneurs and for creatives and for nonprofit organizations. It's just like you said, we often are looking for the money, got to get the money. Everybody's like, got to get the bag, right?
Yeah, right.
But well, the times that we're coming in and with times changing, economics, politics, people's social perspectives, you've got to really think about who you're partnering with, what kind of money you need, where you're getting that money from, what are the deliverables. All of those things really make a difference. What are you saying about your brand and the money that you're having invested into your company and who you're investing with?
That's pretty powerful because I think, when you think in the organizations and getting money, and I know for me as a real estate developer in the wealth world, I often have turned down money because of, like you said, a lot of attachments that I don't necessarily believe in. Like it doesn't do the mission of the work that I want to see done. And so I feel like by accepting that money, I'll lose that part of, the authenticity or the real purpose of what I was trying to, get done. And so I remember the first time that I turned down, an investor turned down money in a deal, and because it had so much social impact attached to it, the investor said, "I want to make the highest return possible. You're suppressing my return by doing all this other stuff." And I was like, "But all this other stuff needs to be done." So, yeah, it was really like one of those moments. And I remember as an entrepreneur thinking like, what did I just do? But feeling empowered, but also feeling like, wow, don't everybody think not even the same way, but at least that the social good part of it. But I also walked away appreciating the honesty and then knowing upfront, like, oh, these we don't align.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, like, whoa,
Exactly.
it took me back, but like, whoa, we really don't align here.
And a lot of times people will ignore the alignment. So
Yeah.
you get that little feeling in your gut like, oh, should I not?
Yeah.
But need sometimes the necessity overrides that, right? And now you've created a culture around the money that you've taken. You've
Yeah.
created a culture about what that is and how that is. And I mean, I've had to turn down money too. In the nonprofit side, on the philanthropic perspective, I've turned it down. And it's been really interesting because people are shocked and surprised
Yeah.
when you do that, right? They are shocked, they are surprised when you do that. They are uncertain. But you
Right.
said something really key when you talk about the language barriers, right? Because he wanted to get the highest return,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so the highest return means different things, right? So what's
Oh,
a
wow,
return on
yeah.
investment? What's a return on
Yeah.
the value?
Yeah.
There's language barriers. And oftentimes we talk about in the community what is happening from the perspective of when social good actually meets and connects with industry, right? So
Wow,
like
yeah.
nonprofit
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, we stand in the
Yeah.
middle of
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
So then what does that look like? Right? What does
Yeah.
that look like? How does that engage?
I like that I like that, the language barrier. Yeah, that you have to make sure you're speaking the same language because how I define return on investment or the highest and best return on investment for a certain project or for my business or my company cannot match the highest return of investment of somebody else thinking. Those are like, that could be
Absolutely.
completely different.
Absolutely. So you see the dilemma when you bring certain types of industry perspectives,
Yeah.
capitalism
Yeah.
into nonprofit
So
spaces or social good spaces.
how do you then recommend, like, for social entrepreneurs and businesses and creatives and people that are wanting to have this, kind of social impact and also wanting to really stay true to what they're trying to accomplish, but then they need money at the same time. Like, oh yeah, all this stuff going on. So how do you balance? Like, how do we balance that?
You do have to find that balance, right? And it is not easy, right? Because the perfect example is return on investment. If I sit 5 different individuals at the table, return on investment means something completely different.
Yeah.
And so we understand that when we're having a social event or having basic conversation as family or friends, right? But we don't often think about that when we're doing business, right? So when we're crossing verticals in industry, you got to first be true to what my business is. What did I find in terms of being a founder for a nonprofit? What does that mean?
Yeah.
How does that engage? What is my culture, right? What's my core value? What's my integrity? And then everything gets measured against that, right? And so that's what you have to do. That's what you have to look at. That's what you have to engage and say, okay, here's this opportunity for partnership. Here's this opportunity for engagement. What do they really need?
Yeah.
What do
Yeah.
they really want?
Yeah.
Right? A lot of times with corporations, when we're talking about nonprofits and corporations, they're looking for branding and marketing, right? That's the return on investment. But for that nonprofit or for that creative, it's the impact and the passion of the narrative. It's the
Yeah. Yeah.
intangibles that actually meet up to the tangibles, right? And so, therefore, you've got to be watching and engaging in a way that really says, hey, I've got this deliverable, but they also have the deliverables.
Yeah.
And so, does the value of the money, does the need outweigh what we're trying to really accomplish, what I'm trying to
Yeah.
accomplish
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur?
And so when they say, when you do that checklist and it doesn't match, then how do you go about finding? And so when we think about this big idea of all money is not good money, and making sure you're speaking the same language. So how do you then, how do we cast the right vision or cast to attract? Because I feel like we should be attracting what we need. If we build businesses or build core values and build, these different things that we build, to me, I think we should build to attract.
I think it's multi-level.
Okay.
Right? Because when you first start out, you don't really know what you're attracting because you've got an idea, you've got a concept, you started a business
Okay.
or a nonprofit, or you're a creative creating something. You've got the idea and the passion. And so you don't really know until you've kind of been vested a little bit. So
Okay.
I think it's 2 different languages.
Yeah.
You don't know what to weed out until things start coming.
You
So
don't
when you
know
start
what
the
you don't know.
business, like when I first started Genesi was a totally different animal than what it is now 8 years
Yeah.
later,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So now I can be solid about my core values. Now I can be solid about when I'm sitting at a conversation, I've been at enough conversations
Yeah.
to now hear certain things or not hear certain things, right?
Yeah.
So I think in the beginning, you have to ask the questions and you have to really determine, where am I right now? What's important to me right now? And then ask the questions of who's sitting across the table.
So why do you think that these conversations, because you and I talk all the time, which is, kind of how all of this came about. And I'm always like, I say, like, I have like super smart friends and super smart colleagues. And and when it comes to the philanthropic world, and just as a good human being, I like you're like way up there. Like you think of philanthropy in a way that I had just never really heard it. done, because it's this big word that you feel like you have to have all of this money or all these resources to be a philanthropist. I would see it in people's titles like, but you really kind of broke that down for me. And I think that, I think just that in terms of, tell me or tell people I know, because you've educated me, but I think it's important just that we are reminded about you and your philosophy and this TED talk that you did, really kind of, giving us a whole ideology switch around it.
Yeah, because people, you know, I started out in corporate, and when I moved to nonprofit world, I had a different view from my heart of the nonprofit space than sometimes what you see like any industry. Once you start working in a position or in an industry, you start noticing all the little things behind the wall, behind the
Yeah.
mirror, and I noticed that people felt like philanthropy was only attached to writing a big check. If I can write $1 million, if I can write $10 million check, if I can give that, then I will be a philanthropist. And that's not the true meaning. I talk about the true meaning of the word and um, the the origin of the word in the Greek, right? And when you talk about philos, it's love, right? Anthropy is mankind, humankind, and that's the love of mankind. So that is applicable to every single human being, right? And so I talk a lot about making philanthropy a sub lifestyle, a
Okay.
life culture,
Life
because
culture.
I can be a vegan, I can be a mathematician, I can be an athlete, oh, I'm a musician, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. But you only get to be a philanthropist if you are in a
If
certain
you're,
index, right? And so when we talk and we're having these conversations, and what I love about the Master Series is that we talk about philanthropy being lifestyle,
yes,
right? And how
yes,
you can apply social good every day.
yes.
Every single, we are not going to move the margin, particularly in the time that we're living right now, with the digital divide about to become greater than what it
My
is.
gosh.
Economies are shifting. There are global changes. We can never give enough money
Yeah.
to resolve all of the issues, but community can. And so if philanthropy is a part of my lifestyle, and philanthropy is a part of my sub life culture. It's a part of my business culture. That's what we talk about, social entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
partnering with nonprofit leaders and founders.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's critical, because together, then we have to find out what's that ecosystem.
Yeah.
How are we speaking the same language? Because if we're not, you might be a great business person and a great person, but maybe I shouldn't do business with you.
Right, right,
Because if
right.
your end game is only the capitalistic view of it, and my end game is, but I got to have some social impact,
Yeah.
there's gonna be a variance there, right?
Yeah.
And so I talk a lot about philanthropy being your lifestyle, and that is dependent on you having a love for community and a passion to make a change. And you can do that by helping your neighbor's kid next door
It's
do their
just that
homework.
simple,
It's just
right?
that
It's
simple.
just that
It's,
simple.
I mean,
Yeah.
we need the money. I'm not knocking the money, but all money is not good money. And so you need to verify, how am I doing this? How am I partnering in different levels? And when I
Yeah.
get to the place of money and I'm getting grants and investments and seed funding,
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
partnering, and now we're partnering and we're in a contract and we're in an agreement, what's that money look
What
like?
does that money look like?
Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that becomes down to core values.
I think that that's like a huge, huge, big idea. And it's also, you're such a thought leader in the space. And I think when you show up to spaces, when your voice show up, when you show up in person, I think you raise the level of expectation and awareness, because you make it that I can do that. I mean, you certainly have, over the last 5 years or so that I've known you. I mean, I've certainly have thought of um, social impact, but also lifestyle. I've taken more of the approach of just being around you and learning more from you of like, wow, I can just, put this in my core of my business, of my life, of everything that I'm doing. So, but you hit on something that I don't want to move too quickly from, because this whole idea of the digital divide, I speak a lot about the wealth divide, the wealth gap, and like how that is just like, I mean, it's going further and further and further and further and further. It's just like if it's something that keeps me up at night, it's that, and how do we close that? How can I have conversations? How can I write books? How can I, share information? How can I help to lessen that wealth gap and that wealth divide? And so when you think about the digital divide, and we have every single conversation, it's like us against the robots and the AI. And, it's like, where's like
Yeah.
Transformers, 5.0 to 2024. So what does that look like? And how are you, how does philanthropy as a lifestyle and everything fit with this digital world?
It's exciting to me personally, but then it's scary at the same time,
Oh yeah, yeah.
right? Because if you're not living in a space where you're connected with grassroots, you don't really understand how big the divide is,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
And so I think everything has layers. Um, the AI, the technology, it's not going anywhere. That's just the era that we're in. It's like every uh, uh, every civilization, they've got this movement,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So we saw the car
Right.
movement.
Yeah.
And you see
Yeah.
industry moving, right?
Yeah.
And it is that time for just knowledge and engagement, right? And that is why it is super important for us to ask more questions. It is important for us to like really look at what our community DNA is,
Yeah.
right?
Whoa. Yeah.
Because what does that divide look like? What does that mean? Who does it mean it for? Every time something comes out, it has an astronomical price until it's normalized, until it's adopted by everybody, right? But we have such great divides, particularly in this country with education systems,
Yeah.
and then with the ability for wealth or the lack thereof. How do I have access? How do I have opportunity?
Yeah.
And things are moving quick.
And oh yeah,
They're
it's
moving
we're at like
so
a
quick,
speed
and it's
of,
scary.
yeah. It is. It is.
It is very
It is
scary.
very scary.
I remember when this was years ago. I had a fundraising event, and we had a partner that wanted to give laptops out to the children. Fabulous idea, right? And so as they were making plans, and this is what I say when you like hearing what's there and what's not there,
Yeah.
right? As they're making plans and they're all excited and they're talking about, in 30 days we're going to come back and we're going to film the CEO and the COO with the partners and the kids and the laptops, and I'm listening
Yeah.
and I'm thinking they don't understand the community that we're doing this for, right? These kids don't have Wi-Fi.
That's what I was about to say.
They don't have
That was
Wi-Fi
all
at
the
home.
initiatives that
So
were like,
we're giving laptops, and I mean they were beautiful, sleek,
yeah.
super modern, the latest thing
Wow.
out. And so I said, and sometimes you also have to not be afraid to have a voice.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times we're experts in an area, and then we get nervous about who's at the table.
Yeah, because it's
or
like
the
this
money
person's giving out all the
involved.
laptops, so what do I?
Yeah, and the money that's involved. So you're like, oh, well,
Yeah.
nice kitty. Don't say too much,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I said to them, I said, well, those laptops won't be here in 30 days. Like, no shame to the community, but when you come back in 30 days to get this report and to do this this post up,
The laptops will not be
they're
there.
not going to be here in 30 days, right? Oh, no, 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 no. So, okay, well, they came back in 30 days and 3/4 of the laptops did not come back. And you're giving out $1,500 laptop in a community where groceries are needed, gas and electric is needed. There may not be Wi-Fi, and if there is, Wi-Fi is after all the other necessities,
Right. Yeah.
right, are
Yeah.
met, right?
Yeah.
And so even just trying to educate partners as to that. And
Yeah.
so if you think about that, and that was wow, like 10 or 12 years ago. So if you think about the opportunity at that time to lift that community with something, the laptop was not how you bring them into that technology piece.
Yeah.
There were other issues.
Those other issues.
And those things have not resolved for
Well,
a lot
that's
of
what I was about to
communities.
say. Like, fast forward,
Fast forward 10 years
kids trying to
later,
even go online and do virtual learning, we discovered like it wasn't just giving them laptops. It's like, they had to give them Wi-Fi
you had to give them
and
the
still
Wi-Fi.
had to, yeah, all of that. Like, yeah.
So all of that matters. And then we're talking about ChatGPT when some kids don't have access, some adults don't have access to just being able to get to their Google. So I think that there is a lot to consider. I think there's a lot going on when we talk about the digital divide. And I do believe the things that we're going to see in the next year or two, it's going to be such a wide gulf.
So is this one of the reasons why you think the timing for these conversations, because it's almost been like an itch for you, like a whole purpose model around timing, like in terms of like, I mean, because you feel that these conversations are like absolutely crucial at this time.
I do.
Is that
I
like
do.
a going into the end of the year? Is that because of this fast paced 1 to 2 years, we're not going to even recognize it if we don't start now getting this information? Where does that heart posture and that concern, because because it's like when I say the wealth gap, you really like this is like your heart's desire. And why do you think that urgency, you have an urgency about it in this time?
I do. I really do have an urgency about it. One, we're in a tidal wave of events. We've got natural disasters happening. We've got the break of war happening in a multiple of places, and war already broken out in places. We've got people losing their jobs. Layoffs are happening, whether people realize it or not. Massive layoffs have been happening.
Yeah.
That's impacting households. We've got gentrification happening.
Yes.
So we've
Yeah.
got displacement of families and children. And I think although we happen to be in an election season that is very critical, I think that the urgency for me is that people have a tendency to be in the buzz moment.
Okay.
And I want people to look beyond the buzz moment. Irregardless of what happens at the election in November, people need to be thinking about 2025.
Okay. Wow.
They need to be thinking about funding. They need to be thinking about the culture that they're building in their business, in their organization. They need to be thinking about conversations now and strategizing and planning, because there's only so much our elected officials can do, right? There's only so much they can do. But how you are going to engage if we've got inflation and we've got recession and we've got the break of war and then we've got elections and we've got this
Layoffs.
end divide. We've got
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
things. We've
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
these crazy weather patterns and storms.
Mm-hmm.
People really need to ground themselves in the perspectives of who am I? What is my business? How am I impacting the community? What am I going to do with partners? Like they need to be planning now for then and not getting caught in the moment of right now.
Yeah.
Because right now is going to come and go. And then you're still 6 months later thinking about the same things. But if you're starting to think about them now and plan now, then when you begin to pivot, and we're going to all have to pivot,
Yes.
it makes the pivot easier if I'm thinking about it 6 months in advance. If I'm strategizing,
Another pivot, right?
Another
Another
pivot.
pivot. Another pivot.
Another pivot.
How do people, because like you said, these conversations and even thinking and what should I be thinking about? How do your programming and everything that you do is around this work? So how do we get in contact with you? Because obviously we need you.
We it has been such a weight that there were workshops and master series classes that we were doing with Janessa years ago that we are actually have revamped and we are bringing them back.
Yeah.
And so we will be having these discussions at a multiple of levels. We're having them for entrepreneurs. We'll be having a series with Watson Media that is creative, talking to creatives because creatives are struggling right now with culture and narrative and finance.
And Watson and Robin, she's the president of
Of
WIFTA.
WIFTA for Women in Television and Film, and she has a advocacy passion for that. So for creatives and then having these conversations with you, and we're going to be having these conversations here in the Studio House Atlanta. This is going to be the place where we have conversations that sometimes people are afraid to have.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm here for it.
We're having. We're having.
I am front and center, and I'm just like I'm really excited to be having these conversations with you because we have these conversations at dinner, we have these conversations on the phone, but it was time to have these conversations in a more of an open format and for people to really be able to engage with it. So,
and it's important, especially the conversations that we're having, that you and I are having, because it needs to transcend their people's businesses, right? And their nonprofit organization. It needs to be able to start transcending into the conversations that you have about wealth.
Yes.
They're not separated.
They're not separated. And
wealth,
that's,
family legacy, wealth building, generational building, real estate, property, people. I get so upset when I see people selling their property. I'm like, stop.
I mean, Iris, we have Iris, Ivana, we have so much to talk about. And so we're going to close this because I want people to stay really dialed into these conversations because I know that they're so important and they're just going to be life-changing and enlightening, and they're going to help people do the work, and they're going to help people plan, they're going to help people pivot, and all those things that we should be thinking about. And so I think you should close us out on this note. Like, we got to close this one out right now because there's a lot.
There is so much more to come.
Yes.
And we want you to join us.
Yeah.
Because I think the conversations are going to be raw, they're going to be open. We're not afraid to voice ourselves and our thoughts, but I think that there's something collectively that we can all learn. And so until we see you at the next conversation.
Yes.
I'm Iris Ivana.
And I'm Sonia Booker, and this has been the Felix Changemakers series.